Hello, hello. Hi everyone. Wait just a few seconds for some people to enter and just do a brief introduction, especially if you're watching on the replay. Hello, my name's Julia. I'm here at Fine Woman and Periscope and Twitter as well, and so it's a play on the name Richard Feynman. So famous physicist. If you don't know who he is, I highly recommend looking him up. So hello, Victoria and Mark. Great. So people got some questions about LiFi. Jessica, Mighty, so nice to see some familiar faces. No drugs today or any day except for the fruit drugs when your autocorrect gets the best of you. So, hello from Dallas, local, wonderful. And Joy, nice to see you in here. Hello. And, merhaba, thank you. Don't know Turkish, but I will learn if I can. So, hello, Mom. All right. Goodness, it's getting crowded in here. So, hi everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I've had a few questions on LiFi and Wi-Fi, and well, actually mostly LiFi. It's a topic that I found interesting, so I thought I'd talk about it today. And very true, Victoria. So I'll also try to answer some questions maybe at the end for general physics questions if you've got them, and if I can answer them, I would love to. That would be great. What does Wi-Fi stand for? Interesting, Hal. So I used to think, and well, to some degree I'm not too far off, but the Wi-Fi is wireless fidelity, but fidelity, so this is a play actually. I found out it's not actually standing for wireless fidelity. It just came about as kind of the way that people talk about it because it's a play on hi-fi, or lo-fi, which talks about the fidelity. Usually when you're talking about music, so this is so it's a kind of play on that. Interesting. So LiFi is similar in the fact that it's kind of taking on that just funny name, but it's using visible light. So I'll talk about that here in just a second. I got some numbers, and I don't know how in-depth people want me to go. I don't know how in-depth I could go at this point, but I do have some of the basics, and we can talk about light and information, etc. in general. Yes, so Li in the LiFi stands for light. So now technically Wi-Fi, this is wireless fidelity, this is ways to transfer information, which is what I'm sure a lot of people are using, including myself, to watch or be on or broadcast on Periscope. So hello, hi, oh, very nice to see you, Connie. So take us to the nanoparticles. So we can go to the nanoparticles if we want there at the end, but really, so I'll get into the LiFi stuff. Ask questions, please, if you know, if you're not understanding something, if you don't follow me. I will do my best to see them all. If I don't see them, or if I don't respond, I promise I am not ignoring you intentionally. So if it's a long question especially, please, if you could copy and paste or rather copy the comment and then paste it if I don't see it again. So it must be line of sight like infrared. Great question, and absolutely it must be, yes. So what's the switching speed? So I don't know the switching speed offhand. What if there is an object in the way? Is that a problem? Absolutely. So I'll get into all this in just a second. So see if I can do kind of a brief review and answer some questions. The word oh, thank you, Parker. No, this is you got a few characters in there, so I can understand it being quick. Okay, so a great TED Talk. Yes, there is a great TED Talk. I'll tweet it out because actually George tweeted it to me, and I haven't seen it in a long time, so I was happy to be refreshed. So will it work in the dark? Yes. All right, so essentially I'll get into the basics. So what is Wi-Fi? Essentially it is the sending and receiving of information wirelessly, which is then taking advantage of the electromagnetic spectrum. Oh, I'm tripping over my words today. Sorry. So, but in the range of frequencies that are used to deliver this information are in the radio wavelength range. So these are the really long wavelengths, low energy. And I will definitely get into what's better and what's worse about them as well. So nice to see everyone here. So the radio wavelengths, these are the long wavelengths up to, and I was looking at the bandwidth actually, or rather the frequency range, and it looks like these waves are we're in the 10 centimeter-ish range. So this is information, right? And it's actually microwave ovens can actually cause interference because it's similar wavelength range. But essentially you're sending information over these frequencies, and this can travel longer distances. So one of the advantages of Wi-Fi over LiFi is actually the range, the distance range. And that's because it's can go through walls and things like that. Radio waves will interfere with less. The longer the wavelength, the less trouble it has when it bumps into something. It's not going to bump into something per se because the length of the wave is actually bigger than some of the stuff that it would actually interfere with. So, goodbye has been real. Well, so it's interesting because, yes, LiFi is real. So some microwaves have interfered with other scientific measurements before, which is really funny. So, or, you know, frustrating, I guess, if you're the grad student trying to figure that out for many years. So what is LiFi? LiFi essentially does the same thing, but instead of using these long wavelength, low energy radio waves, it's actually using light, visible light. And so visible light is going to be higher energy. It's the stuff we can actually see, and the signals are actually made by LEDs. So street light LiFi. So and this may be a way of you know, encoding. You can encode this information via street lamps if you install LEDs, etc. So thank you. Yeah. And if you're any questions or if I'm losing people, please feel free to ask them, and I'll see if I can keep up with them here. Okay, so I didn't know some of these numbers. Wi-Fi range 20 meters about on average. So that's about 66 feet for the people that don't use the proper system of units, I should say. So LiFi is already out. It's been used. It's been actually shown to work really effectively. So it has a smaller range because that visible light is going to scatter off of things like walls a lot easier. It will not be, it won't travel the long distances. But if life pulses wouldn't be able to hack. And seeing is a great question about the LiFi. Yes, if we can see the visible light, what kinds of things are we going to have to see, or will we be able to see in the sending and receiving this information? And it's interesting because what is essentially done is, you can think of as a very simplistic view for now, of turning the light on and off very quickly. And if you turn the light on and off very quickly and encode the information, or, you know, put the information in these frequencies that you're then turning on and off very quickly, then you do that so quickly it's actually faster than your brain will process the light being on versus off, and you will not notice a difference. It'll just look like it's on for your eyes. So, and this is much faster than your eyes are going to be able to discern. So yeah, it's kind of like Morse code. It's very similar in the you can code in the frequencies of the on and off, as well as the actual energies, the frequencies that are in the energies. And so one reason why this is really advantageous and why it's faster, you can send information faster. Yeah, just light flickering, exactly. But flickering so fast that your eye can't see it. And so one of the reasons that this information can be sent faster is because it's got a larger bandwidth, meaning you have a much larger range of frequencies to work with. It will not hurt your eyes because it's going so fast that you're not going to detect it. You know, it'll just look like the light is on. And this is actually true of pulse lasers too. So the laser that I worked with in grad school, it was a pulse laser, and I think I even mentioned the number on Tuesday or yesterday. Then it pulses on and off at 80 million times a second. So it's 80 megahertz. Sort of like AC versus DC. Not quite the same thing, but definitely with the oscillation, there's where a frequency occurs that's important to this. So, but yeah, so the laser that I was working with, 80 megahertz, so 80 million times a second, my eye cannot detect that it's going on and off, pulsing on and off. So to me, in the lab rather, just looked like the light was on the whole time. So that made it a little easier to work with, certainly. So, will fish detect it? I don't think so. I don't know the biology of fish well enough to know what signals they can, or what frequencies they can detect. So is distance a problem? Yes. So distance is a problem because with Wi-Fi, when you have these longer radio waves that you're sending information over, then they can penetrate through things easier, walls, etc., and they're not going to scatter as easily. So light is a lot harder. You have to be able to, so closing a door, for instance, right? If you block the signaling of the receiver, I should say, from the LED that's sending the information, and they use LEDs, not lasers. Great question. So these are the LiFis use LEDs, and the reason is, and I can maybe think of a couple of instances where lasers would be a better choice, maybe in that distance, you know, to overcome the distance, if you can kind of design your space intelligently. But these use LEDs because they will send light over a larger solid angle is like, the technical term, but it's just over a larger area. So it's dispersed over a larger area. So, so I'm talking about LiFi and Wi-Fi. So LiFi using visible light to send information, and so if you think, so I talked about this a little bit before, and I can talk about it ad nauseum, but lasers, one of the things that make them unique and special is that lasers send a beam. All of those light waves are right on top of each other very nicely, going in a single direction, so it's a straight beam. And so that has a very, very, small area that it's going to illuminate, which is good in many ways. So LiFi, if you want to be more sensitive to signaling detecting, then you want to have a larger area that you're emitting light over, and then therefore, it's going to be easier, more of it to pick up. And I think the other thing I read was that some of these signals you can actually, I think the way that they actually send it is that the light is low enough that even if you could see it turning on and off frequency-wise, then they turn it down essentially so that it's so little light that that your eyes are not going to be bothered by it. So now more detail than that, I don't know. I can do the research, but I just kind of got the basics for today's discussion. LiFi, it's funny. So yeah, so LiFi. But again, one of the really, really big benefits, and the reason it can send information so much faster, is because you can send so much more information in a single, say, packet. If you're sending a big chunk of information, you can send much more at once because you have a larger bandwidth to work with. You have, hey George, you have many, many more frequencies to use. So yes, Indian smoke signals are a little bit outdated. So so this is, let's see, so some of the numbers, I think, if I got some of them, so LEDs, let's see, short range, shoot, I thought I wrote it down, I apologize, what the difference in the bandwidth was, but essentially the way that we use, Wi-Fi these days, it's standardized. We actually have to have, right, just for consistency's sake, and to be able to use Wi-Fi in, Starbucks, wherever you go, then you need to kind of standardize the ways in which this information is going to be sent. And so Wi-Fi's, which do beat smoke signals, they are going to be designed, or I should say, sorry, they're going to be encrypted as well, because you want to keep this safe. And somebody was saying, I can't wait until I pick up LiFi or hack LiFi. Maybe that was just me reading into it. But Wi-Fi, one of the big issues with Wi-Fi or any wireless information sending is that it's hackable, essentially. Somebody can pick up a receiver and kind of steal a little bit of that signal and then be able to copy that information. So that's also a concern. And so LiFi has similar concerns, and so you can encode it, but you have so many more frequencies that are available to you, because if you think about it, essentially just in a physical space, you've got how many radio waves can you fit in a physical space if they're 10 centimeters, up to 10 centimeters long. But if you think about optical wavelengths going through space, right, these are thousands of times smaller than the width of your hair. That's the frequency of the light or I should say the wavelengths of the light that we see with our eyes. So imagine how many more of those frequencies you can fit in the same physical space. So that's one way to think about it. Can they use polarization? Great question. I imagine they could. Well, that's a really good question. I should look into that. So I don't know offhand to give you the exact answer, but if I think about it for a second, you could, if you're better with the directional, the way that you send the light and making sure nothing interferes, because if you bounce off of surfaces, if you want to pick up the information that's going to reflect off of surfaces, which is one way that you could actually extend the range of this thing, then if you're bouncing off those surfaces, that can actually change the polarization of whatever you're sending based on the detector. So not sure exactly, but I can look into that. It's a great question, so thank you. So yes, you need booster stations, exactly. You need things to relay the signal across the house, or to take into account that you have doors and things that would block it. So, and health impacts. Great question, and I really would love to get to this, so I'm going to visible. Yes, exactly. So, okay, so we have questions, great. So all these questions are about radiation and health, etc. So first of all, let me tell you, the amount of radiation that you're sitting in right now, you know, if you could see, if you could color and actually see all of the radiation that you're sitting in now, and, you know, think about health effects of a few radio waves or a few different light waves, you'd be frightened. But that's the nature of, I mean, the real issue of danger when it comes to light and it comes to electromagnetic spectrum is really the resonance frequency. So is that frequency, is the energy of the radiation or the electromagnetic fields that you're feeling, is that energy resonant with something in your body? And that's where the danger comes in. So radio waves, for the most part, right, not. Now, microwaves, they are. Certain microwaves can be, because they're resonant with things like the rotation of water molecules. So that's how your microwave oven works, actually. Hi, Sandy. And so different frequencies will be different, will resonate differently with certain parts of your body. But again, there's an intensity issue, there's a scattering issue, and then there's also just you know, it's not resonant with anything, it really doesn't matter. And the amount of, I mean, think of all the radio signals that are being sent, the phone signals. People worry about, like, you know, cell phones and causing cancer, but you have a receiver, but that doesn't mean, just because you have a receiver, it doesn't mean that those radio waves don't exist, or I should say those not just radio waves, but, you know, the whole spectrum of electromagnetic radiation that's in the atmosphere, in the world, I should say, that's around you anyway. So, getting off my rant there for a second. So yeah, I mean, there's really, I've seen like some of these jewelry things that people wear to shelter yourself. I mean, really the only way to block radiation from the world, from you, is to go into an elevator. Any sort of complete metal cage, that's really your best bet. But it's just not practical, and there's no reason to really worry some of these things. So you unplug your wireless Wi-Fi at night. Not necessarily, not for health reasons. I mean, it's good to saving energy. So does it only use visible light wavelengths? The LiFi, yes. LiFi, as far as I know, it's going to use visible light, only in the visible spectrum, and it's really only sent with LEDs. So I'll try. So if anyone has any questions there, the health issue is because I think there's a lot of rumors, and people like to talk about, you know, some amount of radiation that's going to kill you just because of all the new technology, and it's not founded. It's not, it's really, I mean, there are things that we can't know until we study these things for a while, but yeah, I certainly nothing to lose sleep over. When is it going to become available is a great question. Commercially, I don't know. I would imagine soon, though, because this has a lot of potential. It really, I think what it's waiting for is to be standardized. It's waiting for more people to use it, and it's a little bit expensive on the installation side. You have to get the equipment, essentially, to send and receive these signals, and you have to get more people using it to make it useful. So there are serious limitations. So if you know of serious limitation, yeah, it sounds exciting. So if you know more about this, please, I mean, comment, tell me, tweet, comment here, because you know, this is really just my own research on the internet and learning about just some of the basics, and then mixing with what I know about light, I suppose. So does work equate to energy? Good question. No, it doesn't. It does not equate to energy, but energy is the capacity to do that work. So you need the energy to do that work. So can LiFi be used for optical computers? So I'm not sure what you mean about optical computers. If you are talking about the you know, used to send information between computers, absolutely. I mean, just like Wi-Fi, you encode it. It's all digital at the end of the day, and so you send a bunch of frequencies, and then that gets coded into zeros and ones that is read by a machine. As far as like optical or quantum computing, that's a whole different story, which I talked about briefly last week, and I can talk about again another time. But as far as like the overlap of the technologies, there's nothing inherently like that makes that better than just how it's done now, as I understand it. So, optical neural computers, no wires inside computers. No wires. So all the information, I have to, yeah, I've never heard about that. I can look into it. Is that just all fibers, and what's doing the information coding? Is it polarization or? To receive it, yes, yeah, great question. So you would need some sort of detector that detects the frequencies with which this is important. So if you're sending out a range of frequencies in the visible spectrum, you need a detector that picks those frequencies up and then can discern, and so that's certainly the other side of the technology, but that's, you know, goes hand in hand. So Bluetooth is more on the radio wave end of the spectrum. It's kind of towards that. So there's a lot of these that are and this is why they have to be regulated as well, is to keep certain types of communications like Bluetooth versus the Wi-Fi, keep them in their own frequency ranges so you don't get interference and crosstalk between them when you're trying to use them in the same environment. So yes, yeah, absolutely. And George tweeted me that link to the TED Talk, so I can quickly retweet that. So security, encryption, and changes. So this would actually be a great question. So I think this is this certainly has the potential to be more secure, because it's just, I mean, that's an entropy argument, I suppose. At the end of the day, you have a lot more bandwidth, you have a lot more that you can work with. There a lot more information, so you can do a lot heavier encryption without losing a lot of the time and losing the the irony. Very funny, Joy. Losing the robustness of the signal, I suppose. So possibilities, yeah, the possibilities are great. Again, you have certain serious limitations. It's you have distance limitations. Is the main one. Again, cost, because LEDs are pretty cheap, but some of these detectors are not, right? You need certain materials to detect certain wavelength ranges, and then all that down the line. So I don't know, that doesn't mean it won't be cheap down the line, but it may. What about mobile devices? Yeah, your own LED. Well, you have to know the right frequency range, the right frequencies that are being used for the different types of signaling. So LiFi can't. No, it's a great question. So LiFi, because visible light, having such a high frequency compared to the frequencies that are used in Wi-Fi, there's much smaller wavelengths. They scatter much more easily. So it's like light can't go through a wall. So then the LiFi won't be either. So does it have anything? It does not have anything to do with 4G LTE. It may be its own way of sending cellular data. I think that was a question too. Like, what about mobile? There's no reason that mobile devices wouldn't be able to, with the right receiver, right? You just need a different detector in there. Yeah, so you need new detectors in there to pick up these signals. So you'd have to develop new phones to detect them, but there's no reason why they couldn't be. So yeah, as am I, very interested. So yeah, exactly. So, but then you have relays and things to overcome that. So I don't know how commercially viable it is. Certainly not at this stage. It's been, I think it was really came to the forefront in 2000 and I want to say 6 as far as research goes, and then 2011 as far as its applicable use. And then as far as hitting the markets and such, I would imagine in the next few years, and we'll see where it goes. So I kind of need to wrap up here in about 10 minutes. I had to really want to keep this one short today, so I know I always go over, but I'm going to try to be good today. So I'll answer the last couple of questions if we have any. It can't penetrate through walls, but you'll be able to charge. Yes, yeah, so you can charge your device wirelessly. That stuff, I don't know why that's taken them so long to come out. I saw a TED Talk on that years ago. So it's a little bit different technology, but it is, I mean, everything's going wireless these days. Can it be used with fiber optics? Interesting. So I would imagine that the fiber optics, as far as like the creation of the signal, the LiFi signal, again, that's kind of in the similar vein of the lasers. You want to send pulses of light, but over a larger area to be able to detect them easier. Again, this is my kind of thinking through the process, because it's a great question, but I don't know exactly when that would be applicable or not applicable. But fiber optics, again, fibers are really useful in sending light over long distances, but efficiently and lots of different colors. Yeah, and so Google Fiber, etc. It's very fast because you're traveling at the speed of light, but you again need fibers, so that wouldn't be technically I mean, technically it would be wireless, but it wouldn't be fiberless. So you go to fiber connections would be, you know, direct fiber connections. That'll be cool one day. So this is enlightening. I'm glad. Is there data buffering issue due to the Doppler effect? Is there a data buffering issue due to the Doppler effect? So I don't know why. So the Doppler effect meaning you're going to, as you're receiving, if your receiver is moving or then you're going to have a shift. So there must be, yeah, that's an interesting question. So you'd have to take into account, you know, the motion, and offhand I'd do some numbers because I can't think of, I would have to think about the numbers a little bit to see if it would make much of a difference, or how sensitive these devices are going to be compared to the Wi-Fi technology, because obviously your phone works when you're moving, so or when you're walking around. So interesting question. I'll look into some of the numbers. Does an RF waveguide use the same principles as fiber optics? Does an RF waveguide? Okay, so yeah, it does essentially. So you're trapping a mode, and so I don't know if there's a more specific question. LiFi disparities. So. Okay, so I missed maybe a couple comments. I'm trying to read too many at once, I think. But an RF waveguide, so this is a radio frequency waveguide, you're just going to have a bigger antenna usually, whereas an optical fiber is you'd have to have a coupling mechanism from the optical fiber or from the optical signal to the optical fiber, whereas an RF waveguide typically, well, if you're talking about antennas specifically, then those are what is, you're resonating directly. The radio wave or the Wi-Fi signal is resonating directly with the antenna, and whereas a fiber optic is more, you have to couple that light in and get it trapped in there before it guides it down. But the guiding aspect, absolutely, you can guide radio frequencies down a piece of metal, for instance, like down an antenna, to pick up the signal. So there's a lot of overlap for sure, but maybe not directly analogous in its use. So, but surely if you turn around, you're going to be blocked. Yes, so I imagine, Hey. So I imagine, yeah. So if you cover up your receiver, right, just like your TV remote, if you cover up your TV remote, which uses IR, then yes, that would be a way to block it. Which actually thinking about it, may be kind of an additional security measure, or an additional security benefit to it. So can I recap? It's actually a perfect time. I think I should probably recap, and then I'll close out for today. But I will be back, happy to answer all sorts of questions, and please feel free to tweet me. And hello. Lens is an antenna for LiFi. Yeah. Sort of, yeah, pretty much. I mean, you're taking light, you're focusing it into a smaller area, and similar types of ideas there for sure. So as a recap, I was just talking about the difference between Wi-Fi, which is how we wirelessly send information currently or very frequently, and we use the radio end of the spectrum, the light spectrum. So again, this is all light technically, right? Radio waves are technically light, and so you shifting from that, which has worked very well for us, but we're kind of running out of frequency ranges that can be used and assigned to different types of sending information. And so we're going to LiFi, which does the same idea, but you use visible light, and it's pulsed. So it's pulsed, and that pulse is so fast that your eye can't detect it, so it looks like it's just always on. And so then encoding information in the frequencies of that spectrum, you have a lot more frequencies to work with, and so you can send a lot more information kind of at once, which makes the whole process a lot faster. And so, but drawbacks, as we were talking about, can't go through doors. You can, if the light can't travel and be received, or if something's blocking the light, then it doesn't work. So you don't have as much of a range. So would you have to use ceiling? Yeah, I would imagine. I don't know to relay it. I suppose for long distances, I would. So more than that, I can look into maybe light, different lasers that are used. Can IR be used as well? I would imagine that IR is used for sending some some wireless signals, like your TV remote. But again, so I think the visible light, there is a little bit of the red, right? You might include the red in the visible spectrum in this, and that'll be close to the IR. So yeah, so I think it's just an addition to that, and then the higher the frequencies you go, the smaller that wavelength, and then the spectral range then gets bigger. You can send more information. So different rooms can. Yes, exactly. So you could route like the wires to each room, and so if you go from one room to the other, then you'd be picking up from a different signal emitter, but it will be the same signal if it's connected properly with the fibers, and or I guess, yeah, it would probably all be done by fibers at that point, I would imagine. So what about glass? Anything specific about glass? So all phones used to have IR data ports. Yeah, that's true. I mean, so you can actually sometimes, depending on your phone and the camera that's in your phone, and depending on thank you very much, depending on the remote control that you have, if you're worried if your remote control is dead, you can actually just point it in the camera of your phone and try to use it. And you can test this out if you know it's working, and just to see if it's a good test, and you can kind of see it flash, because that camera in your phone usually has a little bit larger of a range of detection than your eye. So, and if you, that's, let's hope so, huh? So can it go through glass? Can it go through glass? Absolutely. So it would be, it absolutely can go through glass. It will be slowed a little bit. If you have a lot of layers of glass or one big slab of glass, then it will be slowed, but, and you will lose a little bit of the efficiency, but once it comes out, you know, as long as you're picking up the signal on the other end of the glass, shouldn't be a problem. Again, it might slow it from the absolute time. Now, if you have, you know, I can't really imagine a situation where you'd be in, you know, in a glass kind of environment. Yeah, that's a silly thing to think. But if you have a detector in glass, you have to take into account the slowing of each frequency differently. So yeah. Now mirrors are great. Mirrors don't change. They don't slow. They reflect, they change the path, they change the direction, but they have a little bit of a different property in them. So, all right, so hopefully that was clear and informative and fun. Thank you for great questions, fantastic input. I hope I didn't miss too many comments. I'll try to go back and look and see if I missed them, or tweet me if I did, and I will do my best. So is there, for why photons interact? Not sure exactly what you mean. I'm getting some really big questions, I think, at the end, so I'll leave this scope, but please, again, please feel free to tweet me and I'll be back so I can answer these again. So, thank you everyone once again. Wonderful, wonderful, and had a lot of fun. And if people want to find out more, I'll see if I can find some more numbers on this LiFi stuff, and could be the way of the future. We'll see. So thank you. Great to see everyone as well, and thanks so much for the hearts and great questions and interactions. Bye, everybody. Happy science!